Welcome back to True Echo, where untold stories of quiet courage and breathtaking truth come to light. In today's story, a black Marine sniper is handcuffed outside his own home, wrongfully accused, humiliated in front of his neighbors. But what happened next silenced an entire courtroom and made a four-star general step in personally. This isn't just a story about injustice, it's a reminder that silence can be deadly, but truth spoken at the right moment can change everything. Stay with us. Put your hands where I can see them. The voice wasn't familiar, but the tone was. It was the kind of voice you obeyed, not because of the law, but because it held the weight of a loaded gun behind it. Darius Coltrane didn't move at first. Not out of defiance. Not even fear, not exactly. It was instinct, the kind honed from years crawling through dirt in Kandahar, watching life play out in slow motion through a sniper scope. His hands were dusty from the fence he had just fixed for Mrs. Garner. An old widow with a voice like molasses and a spine stiff with pride. She had insisted on giving him sweet tea afterward, even though her hands shook when she held the glass out. He hadn't even made it back to his truck before the cruisers boxed him in. 5 of them. Doors flung open. Hands to holsters. No one asked questions. They barked commands. "I'm reaching into my back pocket slowly," Darius said, his voice even. "My ID is in my wallet." He moved deliberately. Just like they'd trained him back at Camp Lejeune, just like he'd instructed rookies during patrols through compound alleys outside Helmand. Smooth. Predictable. Don't give anyone an excuse. But excuses were already forming in the minds of the men in uniform. One officer shouted, "Drop it," even though nothing was in his hand. Another screamed, "Face the truck." So he did. Calmly. Hands up. And then came the cold bite of steel at his wrists. Click. Click. Cuffed. On the street where he grew up. In the city where he'd returned after 2 deployments and an honorable discharge. In front of Mrs. Garner's home, where he used to mow the lawn for free as a teenager. His pickup sat quietly, the old Marine Corps bumper sticker faded but still visible. The toolbox was open, a hammer and a screwdriver inside. And yet, the officers rifled through it like they'd discovered a cartel stash. "You got any weapons in here?" One barked. "Only tools," Darius said. "No firearms. Nothing illegal." Didn't matter. His dog tags swung slightly from his neck as they sat him on the curb. His eyes locked with Mrs. Garner's, who peeked out from her living room blinds, trembling. She didn't call. Of course she didn't. But someone had. A neighbor, probably. Maybe new to the block. Saw a black man in a worn t-shirt and work boots with a hammer in hand and assumed the worst. Someone had dialed 911 and used the word that changed everything. Suspicious. The word was always the spark. The matchstick. The invisible justification. In that moment, Darius wasn't a Marine. He wasn't a neighbor. He wasn't a man who had taken shrapnel for the country now treating him like a threat. He was just black. The female supervisor arrived 10 minutes later. Black, like him. Her uniform crisp, posture confident, eyes sharp. She didn't yell. Didn't escalate. Just held out her hand. "ID," she said. He gave it to her. She stared at the card. Then at him. "You said you're a Marine." "Was," he replied. 2 tours. Afghanistan. Honorable discharge. Camp Lejeune. Briggs was my CO. Her eyes flicked with recognition. She gave a quiet nod to the others. "Uncuff him." The keys jangled. The metal released. But the weight didn't lift. No one said sorry. No one said his name. Just silent footsteps and closed cruisers. No incident report. No, "We'll look into it." Just humiliation and the ache of knowing his uniform didn't matter when the lights were off and the cuffs were ready. "You okay, sir?" the supervisor asked, almost gently. "I will be," Darius said. But he wasn't. Not really. The next morning, Darius didn't turn on the TV. He didn't check his phone. He didn't answer the 34 missed calls from friends, some fellow Marines, others family. He just sat on the back porch of his small home on Melrose Avenue, staring out at the trees. A mug of black coffee in one hand. The other rubbing the raw red marks left by the cuffs. But the world didn't wait for him to catch up. Because Malik, Mrs. Garner's grandson, had recorded the whole thing on his phone. And by noon, the video had gone viral. The video was only 2 minutes long. Shaky, blurry in parts. But it captured everything. Darius on the curb. Hands cuffed behind him. Officers tearing through his truck like they'd uncovered a cartel operation. His dog tags catching the sun. And his voice, calm, precise, unmistakably military, saying, "I'm a Marine. I served. I don't have anything in my hands." Malik had posted it to Facebook with a simple caption. "This man fought for us. Look how they treat him." By the time Darius finished his coffee, the post had been shared over 30,000 times. By sundown, it had crossed 300,000. He started getting calls from people he hadn't spoken to in years. His old sniper team leader from Helmand messaged. "Bro. That was you? You okay?" A retired drill instructor. "Son, I'll raise hell if I need to." Even Sergeant Rivers from Echo Company, who once swore off social media forever, texted him. "If you need backup, say the word. I ride at dawn." It was touching, surreal, even. But Darius knew the cycle. Viral today. Forgotten next week. He didn't want pity. He didn't want fame. He wanted peace. But then the phone rang again. The voice on the other end wasn't familiar. It wasn't a friend. It was official. "Is this Corporal Darius Coltrane?" "Yes. This is Commander Layla King. I'm with Marine Forces Public Affairs. We need to speak with you about what happened Tuesday." He stood without realizing it. "Go ahead. We're aware of the incident. It's being monitored. Command is watching closely." Darius didn't respond. "You don't have to say anything," she added gently. "I just want you to know, you're not invisible." He didn't say thank you. Just hung up and stared at the wall for a long time. Not invisible. It sounded like comfort. But it also sounded like pressure. By Thursday, he was summoned to appear before the Roanoke Municipal Oversight Committee. Not as a defendant. Not as a suspect. As a witness. The city had launched an internal review. The official call log from the 9/11 report had been released, black male with possible firearm near truck. Looks dangerous. The weapon was a hammer. The footage from police bodycams showed no aggression. No resistance. Just Darius, composed and compliant. Yet they cuffed him before even verifying his identity. His assigned legal counsel was Trevor Holcomb, a retired Navy JAG. The man wore a scuffed leather briefcase and had a voice like gravel, but he understood protocol and optics better than anyone Darius had ever met. "You're not suing," Holcomb said. "Not yet. You're just telling the truth. But we're not walking in quiet, understand?" "Yeah," Darius replied. "I understand." That night, Darius was invited to the VFW Hall on 9th Street. He almost didn't go. He expected a few older vets, maybe a beer or two, some tired war stories. Instead, the room was full. Wall to wall with veterans. Army. Navy. Air Force. Marines. Young and old. Black and white. Men and women. Civilians from the neighborhood had even come just to listen. He didn't plan to speak. But someone else did. A white vet in his 60s, bald head gleaming under the fluorescent lights, stood up. I didn't go to war so that a guy like Darius gets treated like a criminal in his own damn yard. A woman in a Coast Guard jacket added, my son's 19. He ships out in 2 weeks. He's black. I'm not scared for him over there. I'm scared for him here. Darius didn't say much. Just nodded. His throat too tight to speak. He wasn't looking to lead a movement. But something was building around him, and he couldn't ignore it. Friday morning. Courthouse. It wasn't grand. No marble pillars. No sweeping steps. Just a beige brick building with humming lights and coffee machines that didn't work. Holcomb met him outside. Navy suit. Cup of gas station coffee. Clipboard in hand. You ready? I guess. Don't guess. Be ready. Inside, the courtroom buzzed with quiet tension. Front row taken by veterans in full dress blues. Among them, 2 Marines he didn't know gave him a sharp nod as he entered, not greeting, but solidarity. He took his seat. The judge entered, stern but composed. The officers involved in his arrest were not present. Administrative leave. No cameras allowed. But plenty of eyes watched from the gallery. The city attorney started with the usual. Officers responded to a 911 call alleging a possible weapon. Based on the circumstances, they acted under the authority of reasonable suspicion. Holcomb leaned over. They're stacking sandbags for cover, he muttered. Darius said nothing. But when he was called to the stand, his voice didn't shake. I was helping an elderly neighbor fix a broken fence, he began. Mrs. Garner. 84 years old. Known her since I was a kid. He explained the sequence. The tools. The truck. The shouting. The cuffs. They didn't ask for ID first. They aimed their weapons first. Holcomb asked, what did you feel at that moment? Darius paused. Scared, he said. Not because of what I did. But because of what they thought I might do. The courtroom was still. I've served in war zones. I've looked through scopes and made decisions I have to live with. But standing on that sidewalk, hands up. I never felt so powerless. The silence stretched. Holcomb asked gently, why do you think they reacted that way? You know why, Darius said. Everyone in this room does. He looked at the gallery. They saw a black man with a toolbox. Not a Marine. Not a neighbor. Just a threat. The judge took notes, stone-faced. Then the city attorney tried to wrap things in procedural ribbon. We regret Mr. Coltrane's experience, but officers responded to a credible call and followed proper channels. Darius stood. May I respond? The judge gave a nod. You say they followed protocol. Fine. Then tell me this, when did protocol start meaning you cuff a man before asking his name? When did possible threat become the same thing as guilty until proven otherwise? No one answered. I'm not asking for vengeance. But if this is how the system works, then something is broken. He sat down. But the courtroom wasn't done yet. Because the next person who walked through those doors would change everything. The courtroom was still humming with tension when the judge called for a short recess. Darius stepped into the hallway, needing air more than space. He leaned against the beige-painted wall near a water fountain, his arms folded tight across his chest. A reporter approached, quick and aggressive. Mr. Coltrane, how does it feel knowing your story is going national? Darius didn't answer. Not because he didn't have something to say, but because he was afraid that if he started speaking, it would come out wrong, too raw, too emotional. This wasn't about a headline. It was about a pattern. A rot in the foundation no one wanted to look at unless it went viral. His lawyer, Holcomb, returned from a phone call and leaned in. "There's someone here you didn't expect." Darius raised an eyebrow. "Who?" "You'll see." The judge re-entered the courtroom, gavel hitting wood, and signaled for proceedings to resume. One by one, the witnesses began to speak. First came Mrs. Garner. She was helped to the stand by a bailiff. Her voice trembled, but her words didn't. "I've known that boy, excuse me, that man, since he was a teenager. He helped me when no one else would. Built me a ramp after my surgery. Bought my groceries when my son moved away. If someone like Darius ain't safe in this neighborhood, then none of us are." She paused. "And I watched those officers look at him like he was already guilty. That scared me more than anything." A few people in the gallery dabbed their eyes. Next was Sergeant Alex Duran, retired Marine, silver-haired, sharp-jawed. He walked with a cane but stood tall at the witness stand. "Corporal Coltrane saved my life. Afghanistan. We were under sniper fire outside Sanjin. I took shrapnel, bad. Couldn't move. He carried me nearly a mile back to safety." He paused and turned slowly toward the city attorney's table. "That's the man you put in handcuffs." Then came a local pastor. A few of Darius's high school teachers. A fellow sniper who flew in from Texas just to speak on his behalf. Each voice added weight, stripping away the image the police narrative tried to paint. And still, Darius remained quiet. Listening. Processing. His mind flashed back to a different battlefield. Helmand Province. Pre-dawn. A child had walked into the perimeter holding goatskin bags. Through his scope, Darius had yelled to hold fire. Everyone thought it was a setup. It wasn't. The boy carried nothing but water. If Darius had pulled the trigger, that boy would have been another casualty written off as collateral. Back home, there were no scopes, but assumptions were just as lethal. The judge shifted in his seat. "We have one final witness. A surprise addition who's requested to speak." The clerk opened the door. And the room froze. Not quiet, frozen. Like time itself paused to make room for the man who stepped in. Boots hit tile. Dress blues glinted. Rows of ribbons decorated his chest like the chapters of a brutal, storied career. The whispers began before anyone could stop them. "That's him." "No way." "Is that really?" The clerk's voice confirmed what everyone already knew. General Raymond Ellison, United States Marine Corps. A 4-star general. Darius stared, unsure if he was dreaming. "Ellison. Here. No entourage. No press. No podium." The general walked directly to the bench. "Permission to speak, Your Honor." The judge, clearly stunned, nodded. "Granted." Ellison turned to face the courtroom. His voice was low, calm, and thunderous in impact. "I wasn't scheduled to be here today. I came on my own accord. Because this isn't just a matter of local oversight. This is personal. And it's national." He turned his gaze to Darius. "I've never met Corporal Darius Coltrane. But I've led men like him. I've buried men like him. And I know, without a shadow of doubt, this is not how we repay their sacrifice." The courtroom was still. No judge's gavel could have quieted it more effectively than Ellison's presence. This man served with distinction. Made decisions under pressure that most of us in civilian life can't fathom. And yet, in his own neighborhood, while helping a senior citizen repair a fence, he was treated like a criminal. He turned toward the city's legal team. His voice never rose, but the power behind it surged. "I say this not as a general, but as an American. This treatment, is unacceptable. It is cowardly. And it is wrong." He faced Darius again. "I apologize. On behalf of every institution that failed to protect you when you came home. You should have been saluted, not suspected." A few audible gasps escaped the gallery. The judge nodded, tight-lipped. "Thank you, General." Ellison turned. Walked out. No press conference. No statements. Just the sound of boots walking off tile. Back at his table, Holcomb was shaking his head in disbelief. "I've practiced law for over 30 years, he muttered, "and I've never seen anything like that." Darius stared straight ahead, throat thick. "Why would he come?" Holcomb shrugged. "Maybe he saw something in you. Maybe he was waiting for a reason." But something had changed. The oxygen in the courtroom was different now. Ellison hadn't just offended Darius. He had condemned the entire structure. And he did it with rank, weight, and the full authority of a man who had seen the price of freedom up close. When the judge called for a recess, the crowd didn't scatter. Instead, people gathered around Darius. Some to shake his hand. Some to whisper thank you. But Darius wasn't thinking about fame or justice. He was thinking about the boy in Hellman. The one with the water bags. Because somewhere out there, maybe in this country, maybe in another kid was going to be seen as a threat before he got the chance to prove otherwise. And unless something changed, that story would end with far worse than handcuffs. When court resumed that afternoon, the atmosphere had shifted. Word of General Ellison's appearance had spread beyond the courthouse walls. Reporters flooded in, scrambling for spots they'd dismissed earlier in the day. More veterans in uniform lined the hallways. Teachers, neighbors, community leaders, all of them packing into every creaking bench and leaning against every wall of that modest municipal courtroom. The back row now held the mayor of Roanoke. Quiet, observant, trying not to be noticed, but they're all the same. Holcomb leaned toward Darius as they waited for the judge. "This case just went national. You ready for that?" Darius glanced around. People whispered his name now. Strangers reached for his hand. It felt unreal, like watching his own life from outside his body. "I don't want to be anyone's hero," he said. "I just wanted to help fix a fence." Holcomb gave a short nod. "And you did. Just not the one you thought." The judge returned, gavel echoing through the chamber. The final phase began, closing statements and formal recommendations. The city attorney stood first. Her voice steady, but laced with bureaucratic caution. This incident, while unfortunate, was not malicious in nature. The responding officers were acting based on the information given, a report of a possible weapon. Their actions were consistent with existing public safety protocol. She paused, as if expecting nods of agreement. None came. "While we regret the distress caused to Mr. Coltrane, we must emphasize that intent matters when evaluating use of force and initial detainment." Holcomb remained seated at first. He didn't shuffle papers. Didn't clear his throat. He just stared at the city's legal team like he was waiting for them to finish tying their own noose. Then he stood. Public safety is not a shield for cowardice. Or bias. Or failure. He pointed to Darius, who sat tall, back straight, hands folded in his lap. "This man, Corporal Darius Coltrane, is not a concept. He is not a footnote. He is not a policy error. He is a human being who has served with distinction. Who has bled for the very freedoms that allowed those officers to make decisions that could have killed him." A ripple moved through the gallery. Holcomb's voice dropped, not in volume but in tone, cold, surgical. "Let's be honest. If this man were white, if he had been wearing khakis instead of boots, holding a tape measure instead of a hammer, you know what would have happened?" He turned to the courtroom. He would have been offered a bottle of water. Maybe even thanked for helping an elderly neighbor. Not thrown against his own truck and handcuffed like a threat. The judge didn't interrupt. Holcomb went on. We aren't here asking for money. We aren't here asking for someone's badge. We are here asking for truth. For accountability. For the bare minimum decency this man should have received the moment he said, "I am a Marine." He sat. The silence afterward was heavier than any gavel. The judge removed his glasses. Folded his hands. "Mr. Coltrane, you are not on trial today," he said. "But the way you have carried yourself, calmly, with dignity and restraint, has shown this court more about character than any policy manual I've ever read." He looked at the city's representatives. "This court will recommend a full policy review regarding use of force in nonviolent civilian calls. Furthermore, the officers involved shall undergo mandatory de-escalation and bias training before returning to duty." It wasn't justice. But it wasn't nothing. Darius didn't smile. He wasn't looking for applause. But the tightness in his chest loosened just slightly. Then the judge said something unexpected. "And Corporal Coltrane," he paused for a beat, "I thank you, not just for your service overseas, but for your patience and strength here at home. You've reminded this court that respect must go both ways." A wave of murmured assent moved through the room. And then it was over. Outside, the crowd had doubled. Maybe tripled. Signs had appeared now, handwritten and bold. "We see you, Darius. Fix the system. Black veterans deserve better." A local reporter stepped forward, microphone raised. "Mr. Coltrane, do you have a message for the public?" Darius paused. Looked at the crowd. At Holcomb. At the flashing cameras and eager faces. Then he shook his head. "I've said what I needed to say," he replied. "I'm going home." The cameras kept rolling, but he didn't care. This wasn't about them. It wasn't even about him. It was about making sure no other soldier, no other kid with a good heart and the wrong skin, would stand where he stood, alone, in cuffs, for doing nothing but the right thing. 3 days later, a heavy envelope arrived at his front door. No postage. Hand-delivered. Gold trim on the edges. Embossed seal. The Pentagon. Inside, a formal invitation. A closed-door forum hosted in Norfolk by the Secretary of Defense. Topic: Systemic bias in law enforcement responses to veterans of color. Darius's name was printed on the speaker docket. At first, he laughed. Not with joy. But with that strange kind of disbelief that creeps in when something becomes too real to ignore. He sat on his porch that night, the wind shifting gently through the trees. His cousin Kian joined him, leaning back with a bottle of Coke in hand. "You gonna go?" "I don't know," Darius said. Kian looked at him sideways. "You didn't ask for this. But you're in it. You already stood up once, might as well finish it." Darius took a long breath. And nodded. Darius showed up in Norfolk 2 weeks later, not in dress blues, not in a tailored suit, but in a pressed button-up shirt and slacks. No medals, no ribbons, no need for performance. He didn't come to be honored. He came to speak. The Pentagon Forum was held in a sealed room with no press, just policy advisors, senior brass, veterans from across branches, and civilian watchdog groups. Everyone there had seen the video. Everyone there had read the transcripts from the courtroom. But Darius didn't lead with drama. When it was his turn to speak, he stood behind the plain wooden podium, took a breath, and said, "I'm not here because I want justice for myself. I'm here because I know how close I came to being a headline." He looked around the room, rows of stars and suits, silver-haired colonels and clean-cut cadets. "I was one wrong move from being a chalk outline. Not because I did anything wrong. But because of what they assumed when they saw me." He let that sit. Not angrily. But with the precision of a sniper who knew when to pull the trigger. "I fought for this country. Twice. I've carried brothers out of kill zones. I've risked everything for people I'll never meet. But none of that mattered when I stood in my own neighborhood holding a hammer. He paused. Let his words settle like dust. If we say we honor veterans, we can't just mean parades and bumper stickers. We have to mean dignity. We have to mean protection. We have to mean real change. He stepped down without flourish. But the room stayed still for several seconds, like people were afraid to breathe too loudly in the wake of what he said. After the session, the Secretary of Defense, an aging man with tired eyes and a calm intensity, approached him. You said what a lot of us have tried to say in boardrooms for years, he said. But you said it cleaner. Darius didn't know how to respond. The secretary gave a small grin. Still thinking about re-enlisting? No, Darius said honestly. Good. We need you out here more. That night, back at his hotel, Darius received another message, this time, from the Roanoke Police Department. An official, public apology was being issued. Not a PR stunt. Not a lawyered-up half-measure. A real statement. From the chief himself. We recognize that our officers acted prematurely and failed to uphold the standards of respect and service that every citizen deserves, especially those who have served this country with distinction. We are deeply sorry to Corporal Coltrane and to the community we failed. It aired on every local channel the next day. One of the officers involved resigned quietly. 2 others were reassigned and placed in mandatory retraining programs. The department created a new community liaison position, offered, and later accepted, by a Marine veteran with social work credentials. Darius didn't attend the press conference. He didn't stand behind the podium or smile for cameras. But the message reached him just the same. This time, someone had said the words he should have heard from the start. We were wrong. Back in Roanoke, things didn't return to normal. They evolved. Mrs. Garner's fence. Painted and repaired again, this time by volunteers from the local VFW and a group of high school kids who saw the video and wanted to help. Teenagers started coming by Darius's place, not for autographs, but for advice. How do you join the military? How do you stay calm when the world expects you to snap? And something shifted at the local precinct, too. A younger crop of officers began showing up at town halls, some nervous, others sincere. They listened more than they talked. Some came alone. Others with partners. Not all were perfect. But the effort showed. One Saturday afternoon, Darius was leaving a community event when he noticed a uniformed officer waiting by his truck. His body tensed reflexively. Old trauma. Still there. Always would be. But this officer wasn't posturing. He looked young. Nervous. Not a hand near his weapon. Just a notepad in one hand, sweat on his brow. Corporal Coltrane, he asked. Yeah. The young man extended his hand awkwardly. Officer Green. I'm new to the department. Darius stared at the hand for a moment, then shook it. Green stammered, I just wanted to say. I read your case file in training. They use it now to show us what not to do. He looked down. Then up again, eyes flickering with something that looked like shame. I'm trying to do better. I just wanted you to know that. Darius nodded. Good. Green nodded back and walked away. The moment didn't make headlines. There was no applause. But it lingered with Darius longer than any courtroom speech. Because change doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it walks up with shaking hands and too many things left unsaid. Weeks passed. Then one morning, another letter arrived. No postage. Again. Just like the one from the Pentagon. This time, it was from General Ellison. No press. No fanfare. Just a handwritten note on military stationery. You reminded me why I joined in the first place. Don't stop. We still need you. Ellison. Darius folded it and slid it into his wallet, next to his military ID, and the receipt for the hammer he'd bought the week before that Tuesday afternoon. Memorial Day in Roanoke had always been a quiet affair, small ceremony at the town square, veterans in folding chairs, a wreath laid gently at the base of the old stone monument with names from 3 wars. But this year, the crowd was different. Bigger. Younger. More diverse. Word had spread that Darius Coltrane would be speaking. He hadn't agreed right away. He didn't like speeches. He didn't want to become that guy. But something inside told him that silence now wouldn't be humility, it would be surrender. So when his name was called, Darius stepped up to the wooden podium, dressed in a simple gray button-up and slacks. No medals. No rank insignia. Just the presence of someone who had seen too much to fake anything. He looked out over the crowd, families, high schoolers, retired soldiers, teachers, local officials. He spotted Mrs. Garner near the front row, flanked by 2 teenage volunteers who had painted her fence last week. Behind her, a young man in an ROTC uniform stood with his jaw clenched, watching every move Darius made. Darius gripped the podium and began. When I was overseas, we had a saying, we fight for the guy next to us. That doesn't stop when we come home. It shouldn't. He paused, letting the words settle. I've heard people call me a hero lately. I've been on the news, quoted in articles, even got a letter from the Pentagon. But I want to be clear, what happened to me shouldn't require heroism to survive. I was handcuffed outside my neighbor's house for doing nothing wrong. I wasn't a suspect because of what I did. I was a suspect because of what I looked like. A hush fell over the crowd. Not out of shock, they already knew the story, but because of how plainly he said it. You don't get to call us heroes on Monday and profile us on Tuesday. That line cracked something open. A few people clapped. Then more. Until the entire town square was on its feet. Not because it was a performance. But because it was the truth. After the ceremony, a local high school teacher approached him with a group of students trailing behind. Would you ever come talk to them? Maybe about leadership, or just life. Darius smiled faintly. Sure. One kid stepped forward, couldn't have been more than 15. You really a sniper? Darius nodded. The kid hesitated. Were you scared? All the time, Darius said. But I did it anyway. And just like that, something started to change again. It began small. One school talk became 2. Then a community mentorship program reached out. Then a local nonprofit asked if he'd consult on veteran outreach. He didn't do it for recognition. In fact, he kept turning down interviews, even when national outlets came calling. But the community noticed. And more importantly, the kids noticed. He became less, the guy from the video, and more, Mr. Coltrane, the one who shows up. One afternoon, a local deputy approached him after a panel discussion. I just wanted you to know, she said, the department revised protocol. Now, if there's no immediate threat, IDs come before cuffs. She paused, glanced down. I know it's not enough. Darius didn't give her a pass. But he gave her a nod. Because even small pivots can change a whole course, if people are willing to steer. At home, life stayed quiet. He still worked part-time fixing up properties for local seniors. Still met Kian for coffee every other Sunday. Still walked the dog of the old man 2 houses down who couldn't make it up the stairs anymore. But sometimes, people stopped him in the grocery store. You're the Marine, right? He'd nod. Maybe shake their hand. Then keep walking. He didn't crave attention. But he understood something now, this wasn't about craving it. It was about carrying it. Not for himself. But for the next kid who wouldn't have a general walk into the courtroom for them. And then, one evening, just as the last rays of sunset brushed across the rooftops of Roanoke, Darius got a call. It wasn't the Pentagon. Not the mayor. Not a lawyer or journalist. It was Malik. Mrs. Garner's grandson. "Hey," he said, voice low. "I know this might sound crazy. But I've been filming some stuff lately. Little documentaries. About veterans. I want to do one on you." Darius exhaled. "You sure anyone still cares?" Malik chuckled. "Are you kidding? You're the reason I picked up a camera." He paused. "I saw what happened to you. And I realized, if we don't tell our own stories, someone else will. Or worse, no one will." That line stuck. And it reminded Darius of something the general had written in that letter. "You reminded me why I joined. Don't stop." The camera was small. Nothing fancy, just a handheld DSLR, one lav mic, and Malik's unshakable drive. They filmed over 3 afternoons. No script. No makeup. Just Darius, sitting on his porch or walking down Melrose Avenue, telling pieces of his story the way they happened. "I never wanted to go viral," he said in one take. "I wanted to fix a fence. That's it." He looked off screen. "But I guess sometimes, doing the right thing puts you in the middle of the wrong fight." Malik titled the short documentary, "The Fence and the Flag." It was just under 10 minutes. He uploaded it to YouTube with no marketing, no push, just the words. He didn't ask to be a symbol. But he stood up when it mattered. This is Corporal Darius Coltrane. The video passed 1 million views in a week. Darius received letters again. But they were different this time. Not from institutions. From people. A Navy wife in Florida whose son had been profiled at a gas station despite wearing his uniform. A black high school student in Ohio who said Darius inspired him to speak out against abuse at school. A father in Montana who watched the video with his teenage son and ended the night in tears. But one letter hit differently. It came from a Marine in active duty, stationed overseas. She wrote, "We watched your court video in our barracks. I showed it to the new recruits. Not because of what happened to you, but because of how you handled it. That's leadership. That's who I want to be when I come home." Darius folded that one carefully and placed it next to Ellison's note in his wallet. Months passed. Then a full year. Life didn't revert. It grew. The Roanoke Police Department quietly implemented a revised escalation policy for nonviolent 911 calls. The city established a Veterans Community Board to improve dialogue between returning soldiers and law enforcement. And Darius, without planning it, had become its first honorary chair. He never liked the spotlight. Still didn't. But he understood something now. This wasn't about him anymore. It was about momentum. About direction. About making sure that the kid who picked up a camera, the rookie cop who reached out in a parking lot, or the next young Marine walking down the wrong block with the wrong skin didn't get left behind. On the first Memorial Day after the incident, he stood again at the podium. This time, not because he was asked, but because he chose to be there. His voice steady. His message clear. Our country's greatness isn't proven by how we treat our veterans abroad. It's proven by how we treat them when they come home. And I'm not just talking about medals or parades. I'm talking about respect. Dignity. Understanding. I want a country where a soldier can fix a fence without fear. Where your skin doesn't erase your service. Where silence isn't the price of survival. He looked into the crowd, not for applause, but for understanding. Don't thank me for my service unless you're ready to stand up when that service is disrespected. The square erupted, not with claps, but with conviction. People didn't just hear him. They felt him. As the crowd dispersed, a young Marine approached. Just graduated. Barely 20. Still had that boot camp stiffness in his stride. "Sir, I just want to say, thank you. For what? For showing me how to fight the battles that come after the uniform. Darius looked at the kid for a long moment. Then extended his hand. Just don't forget the people still in the fight. Some stories end with fanfare. Others with a folded flag or 21 guns. But Darius Coltrane's story didn't end. It continued. In classrooms. In policy meetings. In quiet one-on-one talks with kids who'd never even heard of Kandahar, but knew what it felt like to be misjudged at home. He didn't win a medal for what he endured that Tuesday afternoon. But he gave America something far rarer. A mirror. And the courage to look into it. What happened to Darius Coltrane wasn't just a misunderstanding, it was a reckoning. One man's quiet dignity revealed the loud silence of a broken system. And in standing up, he taught us that real leadership doesn't shout, it shows up. The truth? Your skin shouldn't cancel out your service. And silence should never be the price of your safety. If this story moved you, share it. Talk about it. Let Darius's story echo in classrooms, courtrooms, and conversations across the country. Subscribe to True Echo for more powerful stories like this. Leave a comment, let your voice be heard, and help us make sure the next Darius doesn't need a 4-star general to be seen.